The afternoon drizzle fell in a fine mist, dampening the narrow alleyways of South Philadelphia's Ninth Street Market. The smell of wet garbage mingled with the sharp aroma of provolone and cured meats hanging in the air. Among the piles of cardboard and empty bottles, a young woman with a pale face and ragged clothes was patiently sorting recyclables. Her name was Sarah, around 22 years old. People in the area knew her as the new canner. Her frame was small, but her movements were deft. Every morning, she appeared with a large, battered shopping cart, navigating the slick pavement. She rarely spoke, let alone looked anyone in the eye. To the market vendors, Sarah was just one of many struggling souls trying to scrape by on the city's leftovers. However, no one knew that behind that grimy face, Sarah was far from ordinary. She was, in fact, a young undercover detective from the Internal Affairs Division, IAD, assigned to infiltrate an extortion racket plaguing the market. A racket long suspected of being protected by dirty cops from their own department. This kind of deep cover-up wasn't new to Sarah. Before joining IAD, she'd been a beat cop and then a detective in the city. She was known as a smart, brave officer capable of blending into any situation. But this time, the mission was riskier. She had to go in deep with no official cover, no wire, and no backup team ready to swoop in at a moment's notice. Her primary goal was simple but dangerous: identify the kingpin of the shakedown operation, especially the uniformed officers protecting it. The last report stated small vendors were being forced to pay a weekly protection fee by a group of men claiming to work for the local precinct. Sarah had been undercover for 2 weeks. She lived in a tiny, rented room in a run-down row house just off the market, a place where sunlight barely bothered to enter. She posed as a canner to blend in without suspicion. From there, she observed the patterns of the players. Who came, who collected the cash, and who stopped by the security post at night. However, one thing she hadn't confirmed: which cops were directly involved. Her first encounter with a dirty cop happened that evening. As Sarah was weighing a bag of aluminum cans in front of a coffee shop, a patrol car pulled up abruptly. 2 police officers got out. One of them was big, with a thick mustache, wearing sunglasses even though the sun was setting. The nameplate on his uniform read Vettori. "Hey, what are you doing here?" Vettori asked gruffly, looking Sarah up and down. Sarah looked down respectfully. "Just collecting cans, officer." Vettori grunted, then kicked the cart next to Sarah. "This is my beat. You wanna work here? You gotta get permission. Understand?" Sarah pretended to be confused. "Permission, sir? I'm just collecting cans." "See, now you're getting smart," Vettori cut in, his voice rising. "Listen, everyone who makes a buck around this market has to kick something in. $50 a week. Minimum. You don't, I'll haul you down to the precinct." Sarah was silent. She knew if she pushed back too soon, her cover would be blown. She just nodded slowly. "Okay, sir. I'll try." The officer smiled cynically. "Smart. Tomorrow, drop the cash at Maria's Deli. Tell her it's for Vettori." "Got it." Sarah nodded again, pretending to be afraid. Inwardly, however, she had just found the first piece of the large puzzle she was looking for. The name Vettori. Later that night, in her disguised role, after the market was quiet and the drizzle had stopped, Sarah wrote notes in a small book. Her hand trembled slightly from the cold air. Officer Vettori is the bagman for the west side of the market. Suspected cooperation with larger vendors and illegal parking attendants. Collection point: Maria's Deli. 9 a.m. She stared at the note for a long time. Every undercover mission tested her, not just her courage, but her patience. There was no uniform, no professional courtesy, no protection. Just the silence and the smell of trash that clung to her clothes every day. But behind it all, Sarah had a personal reason why she was so relentless in cracking this case. Her father had been a small fruit vendor who went bankrupt because of a shakedown just like this. From that day, Sarah had sworn she would find a way to get justice for those who were powerless. Suspicion and lingering danger. The following days dragged on. Sarah continued to monitor the movements of Vet Ori and his crew. She found that the protection money wasn't just collected from vendors, but also from delivery drivers, parking attendants, and even the food truck operators parked near the mini terminal. Every afternoon, Vet Ori would arrive in his patrol car, pretending to be on a routine patrol. But Sarah knew that car often left carrying a black duffel bag full of cash. Sometimes they'd hang out at the security post near the small overpass, drinking coffee and laughing loudly, as if nothing was wrong. But eventually, one of Vettori's men started getting suspicious of Sarah. The man's name was Mickey, a former street tough who is now a paid informant. He noticed Sarah never actually sold her recyclables. Sometimes she just circled specific areas, jotting something on a small piece of paper. One night, while Sarah was weighing plastic bottles in front of an empty warehouse, Mickey secretly followed her from a distance. He saw the girl writing in a small notebook. When Sarah turned, Mickey quickly ducked behind a pillar. He then smirked. What kind of canner is writing notes every night? Unless. The next day, Mickey reported to Vet Ori. The first confrontation. That morning, the market was bustling. Vendors shouted their daily specials. The aroma of roasting coffee mixed with the smell of damp earth. Sarah was sitting on the curb, pretending to sort cardboard. Suddenly, a large shadow fell over her. When she looked up, Vet Ori was standing in front of her with two of his men. You! Come here, Vet Ori commanded. Sarah feigned surprise. What is it, officer? Vet Ori stared intently. You're not just some street trash, are you? I got a report you've been watching people, writing things down. Sarah tried to stay calm. I just write down the items I collect, sir. So I don't forget. Liar. Vet Ori kicked a bucket near Sarah's feet, splashing dirty water. People in the market started to look. Several fishmongers pretended to be busy, but it was clear they were watching. I'm giving you a warning, Vet Ori said, bending down to stare closely at Sarah's face. Don't get involved in the business of this market. If I see you doing anything strange again, you'll regret it. Sarah swallowed hard. In front of so many people, she could only look down. But inside, her anger was boiling. She knew that threat wasn't just talk. Flashback, the girl behind the uniform. After that incident, Sarah returned to her small room, her hands shaking. She stared at her face in a small mirror. A dirty face, matted hair, but her eyes remained sharp. In her mind, memories of her childhood surfaced. She remembered her father, who ran a fruit stand in their neighborhood. Every week, men in uniform would come to collect security fees. When her father refused, his stand was vandalized that night. That was when her family's life changed. Her father died under the stress, her mother got sick, and Sarah swore that one day she would dismantle that rotten system from the inside. This mission wasn't just a job. It was vengeance wrapped in justice. The bold move. A few days later, Sarah decided to take a bigger risk. She secretly followed Vet Ori to a small, old-school diner on the outskirts of the neighborhood. There, she saw Vet Ori hand a thick envelope to a man in plain clothes. The man looked official, wore a crisp suit, and had a large ring on his finger. From the muffled conversation, Sarah caught the name Captain Reynolds. That name made her heart pound. Reynolds wasn't just anyone. He was a ranking officer at the local precinct. This meant the racket went all the way up to the brass. Sarah secretly took photos with a small phone hidden inside her bag. But before she could leave, someone tapped her shoulder from behind. She turned. Mickey was standing there with a suspicious look. What are you doing here, Sarah? His voice was cold. Sarah tried to smile. Just looking for empty bottles, man. Mickey stepped closer. No trash here. Only guys with money eat here. Kinda weird, right? A canner hanging out at a joint like this. Sarah didn't answer. In that tense second, Mickey suddenly tried to snatch her bag. On reflex, Sarah held on with all her strength. The bag tore slightly and her small phone almost fell out. Luckily, the sound of a car horn behind them made Mickey glance away for a second. Sarah used the moment to bolt into a narrow alley and disappear into the crowd. That night, she knew one thing for sure. Her cover was in imminent danger of being blown. The crisis. Back in her room, Sarah sat staring at her cracked phone screen. The photos she'd taken were clear enough, showing the meeting between Vet Torai and Captain Reynolds. It was strong evidence, but not enough to bring them down. She needed audio, a direct transaction, and witnesses. But time was running out. If Mickey reported what he saw, Vet Torai would surely make a move by morning. Sarah had to decide, continue the mission and risk capture, or end the op before it was too late. She chose to stay. If I stop now, all this sacrifice was for nothing, she muttered quietly. I'm not the weak scavenger they think I am. With a heavy breath, Sarah planned her next move. She would approach Maria, the owner of the deli where the money was collected. The woman seemed pleasant and friendly, but Sarah suspected Maria held more secrets than she let on. Outside, the rain began to fall again, tapping rhythmically on the tin roof of her room. Amidst the sound of the rain, Sarah stared at the blurry window and said to herself, if they think I'm just a canner, they're going to be shocked when they find out who I really am. And that night, Sarah's undercover mission entered its darkest chapter. The drop-off point. Morning at the 9th Street Market always started early. The voices of vendors competed with the rumble of delivery trucks. The air was still damp from last night's rain. Amidst the crowd, Sarah walked slowly, carrying her cart. Her steps seemed casual, but her eyes were sharp, scanning every corner. Her destination was clear, Maria's Deli, the place Officer Vet Torai had named as the drop-off point for the protection money. The deli looked simple, a narrow storefront with a formica countertop. A large pot of chili steamed enticingly on a hot plate. But for a keen observer, something was off. Every morning, several men in worn-out work clothes would come in, hand a small envelope to Maria, and leave. Not to buy food, but to drop something directly into a steel lockbox under the cash register. The first conversation with Maria. Sarah pretended to stop in for a coffee. She sat on a long bench near the door, a safe distance from the register. From there, she could watch Maria. A woman in her late 40s, heavy-set, with a wide smile, but sharp eyes, the eyes of someone used to sizing up friends and foes. New face? Maria asked, pouring coffee into a styrofoam cup. Yeah, just. New to the area, Sarah replied weakly. It's tough work out here. But be careful, a lot of nosy people. Sarah glanced at her. Nosy how, ma'am? You'll find out yourself, Maria answered quickly, smiling. Drink your coffee. Sarah took a slow sip. She knew that tone. It wasn't just small talk, it was an implied warning. Before she could ask more, two men came in carrying envelopes and handed them directly to Maria. The woman weighed them quickly in her hand, then dropped them into the lockbox without counting. Sarah pretended to be busy looking out the window, but her ears caught their short exchange. From the poultry guy. Okay, tell Vet Torai. I'll see him at the overpass later this afternoon. That word, overpass, was immediately stored in Sarah's mind. A new meeting point, likely the handoff for the collected cash. The sign of danger. That evening, Sarah sat behind a stack of flattened cardboard boxes near the overpass mentioned. From there, she could see the small access road used by sanitation trucks and delivery vans. Around 5 p.m., a patrol car pulled up. Officer Vet Torai got out, carrying a small bag. Soon, Maria arrived from the direction of the market, carrying a grocery bag. They exchanged something quickly, then spoke for a moment. Sarah took photos with a mini camera hidden in an old soda can. Just as she was about to hide the camera, her eyes caught something. Someone in the distance was watching her. It was Mickey, the man who had almost blown her cover. Sarah held her breath. She knew she couldn't just run, that would be too suspicious. So she continued to pretend to sort trash, while mentally counting every second. Mickey walked closer. His steps were heavy but certain. From his face, Sarah knew he was confident in his suspicions. When he was just a few feet away, Mickey spoke, his voice low but sharp. Still pretending to look for bottles, Sarah? Sarah didn't look at him. Yeah, man. It's my job. Mickey squatted next to her, staring directly at Sarah's face. It's weird. What kind of canner hides a tiny camera in a soda can? Sarah's heart stopped. She instinctively grabbed the can, trying to hide it in her cart. But Mickey's hand was faster. He snatched the can, popped the lid, and found the camera inside. I knew there was something wrong with you, Mickey yelled, standing up. His loud voice made Vet-Ori and Maria turn around in the distance. In that instant, Sarah knew her cover was officially blown. The chase in the market. Vet-Ori shouted angrily. Get her. Don't let her get away. Sarah bolted toward the market, weaving through the crowds. Vendors and shoppers screamed as they saw two men, one in uniform, chasing the canner girl who was running for her life, still dragging her cart. The pavement was slick and she almost slipped several times. But adrenaline kept her going. Vet-Ori pulled his weapon but couldn't get a clear shot in the crowded area. He just yelled, "Stop. Police." Note: the following section of the original text about Buyani the hero vendor is a contradictory narrative from a different story. The adaptation will now skip to the resolution of Sarah's/Ronnie's story. The aftermath. Dawn broke over the city, coloring the South Philadelphia sky in a soft orange. The 9th Street Market came alive as usual. But there was one major change: the absence of the arrogant cops who used to prowl the stalls, looking for their weekly fee. The vendors' faces looked calmer. There was no longer a sense of anxiety every time the sound of heavy boots echoed on the pavement. At the 3rd District Precinct, the atmosphere was tense. The three officers, including Vet-Ori, Captain Reynolds, and the other officer, now sat in an interrogation room, their faces pale. They already knew their careers as law enforcement officers were over. In front of them stood Sarah, this time in her official detective's uniform, complete with her badge and credentials. The steel door creaked open. Captain Miller, Sarah's direct supervisor from IAD, walked in. I told you, your job is to protect the public, not fleece them, he said, his voice calm but sharp. And you just assaulted an officer who was fighting to clean up this department's name. The three men just looked down. There were no more excuses. Sarah looked at them, not with hatred, but with disappointment. I went into the field not to trap you, but to find out just how broken the community's trust in us was. Turns out, it was deeper than I thought. A few days later, the body cam footage from the officers involved, combined with Sarah's own evidence, was released to the public as part of the official report. The 3-minute clip showed how Sarah was treated and how the other vendors had tried to intervene during the chase. The video went viral overnight. Thousands of comments poured in. Props to those vendors who tried to help. Finally, a cop actually working for the people. Good job, IAD. They thought she was just trash. Turns out she was the one taking it out. The 9th Street Market also received attention from the city. The streets were repaved, sanitation services were improved, and the extortion racket was officially dismantled. The vendors often saw Sarah walking the beat, this time without a disguise or ragged clothes, just with a warm smile and a friendly greeting. Detective, come get a hoagie. On the house for the market's hero, yelled Lena, the proprietor of a butcher shop. Sarah laughed. Be careful, I might get used to that and come by every day. But behind it all, Sarah knew her job wasn't finished. The case at the market was just one small piece of a larger network of corruption at higher levels. But at least her small fight had sparked new hope that honesty and bravery, even when misunderstood at first, could still change things. One evening, Sarah stood on the same overpass near the market, watching the flow of traffic. The night breeze was cool, carrying the smell of damp earth and the sound of life returning to normal. Captain Miller came up beside her. You did a big thing here, Sarah. But I know you're still carrying the weight. Sarah looked out toward the market. I just want people to trust this uniform again, Captain. If they can smile without being afraid, that's enough for me. Miller nodded. That's why you deserve to be here. A few months later, the 3rd District was declared clean of the extortion racket. Internal reforms were implemented. Honest cops were given the space to speak up. Over the precinct entrance, a new banner hung, to protect and to serve, not to shake down. Sarah, now promoted to sergeant, walked past the banner with a steady gait. She looked at the faces of the community members who used to look down in fear, but who now greeted her with a smile. Her detective's shield was still pinned to her belt. But now she didn't need a disguise to prove who she was. She was known not as a weak canner, but as a symbol that truth can sometimes come from the most unexpected places. And amid the bustle of the recovering market, Lena's voice rang out again. "Hey, Sergeant. That hoagie offer is still good." Sarah laughed. "In that case, I'm officially a regular." She sat on a simple wooden bench, enjoying a warm sandwich, watching the market that was now alive with peace. The undercover